and demonstrate that gyrocopter. And of course, then I redesigned it with colors and rockets and God knows what. We were trying to be as realistic as possible, not to cheat the audience.
The gyrocopter was fitted with real-life weapons, some of which could even have fired live rounds.
She has simulated machine guns here. They fire 30 explosive charges in each gun, and there's an electric motor that runs a switch around, so it's flash, flash, flash from the guns, but nothing actually comes out. These smaller rockets are genuine rockets. They're actually fired time and time again in the film. And then these represent the so-called heat-seeking missiles, and they were fired off the aircraft with powerful rocket motors, and they could have been for real as well. So there's no question about it. It could fire real weapons, and it could knock out another aircraft or tank.
With its winning formula of guns, gadgets, girls, and gripping storylines, James Bond has truly become a cult phenomenon. The Bond movies began in 1962, and with Sean Connery playing the role of 007, they were soon captivating audiences all over the world. Meanwhile, President Kennedy had named From Russia with Love as one of his 10 favorite books, and James Bond was taking the United States by storm. 007's rise to fame was nothing short of meteoric, but back in his Jamaican villa, Bond's creator Ian Fleming was privately feeling the strain.
He had a very strict routine. He used to be at GoldenEye for January and February, and he wrote for 3 hours in the morning and then another hour in the evening.
When he came back, he would then publicize the book he'd written the previous year, edit the one that he was writing, and also have to think of the next adventure, which he was going to have to write on his next holiday, the following January. So at any one point, Ian Fleming was involved with 3 Bond books.
Fleming was finding the pressure to produce Bond more and more exhausting. Even as he wrote the 5th book, he was already beginning to think the unthinkable. Should he bring his secret agent story to an end?
He actually toyed with killing him off many times in the series. And at the end of From Russia with Love, you don't know whether Bond has survived or not. He gets stabbed in the shins by a poison spike that has come out of the front of Rosa Kleb's boot.
Now he had to gasp for breath. Again, his hand moved up towards his cold face. He had an impression of Mathis starting towards him. Bond felt his knees begin to buckle. He said, or thought he said, "I've already got the loveliest." Bond pivoted slowly on his heel and crashed headlong to the wine-red floor.
Many readers believed it was the end of James Bond. Fleming was deluged with letters to keep him going. In fact, Fleming had already written the next book by the time that came out, but it was a sort of measure of how he had entered the public consciousness that he couldn't just be killed off.
But James Bond would never be killed off. By the time the next novel appeared, Bond was back and very much alive and well. And in the movie From Russia with Love, Bond's death was noticeably absent. He simply got the girl. As the public image of James Bond passed into Sean Connery's hands, Ian Fleming retreated from the limelight, staying in the countryside and playing golf with friends. By the time he began writing The Man with the Golden Gun, the 12th James Bond novel, Fleming secretly knew that this would be his final story.
Fleming certainly grew tired of Bond. I think the weariness of maintaining this fiction, this fantasy, got to him.
I think Ian was quite fed up by the time he finished writing them. It takes a lot of energy to write a book and to keep up the pace. I mean, 1 a year.
Fleming wasn't simply fed up with his punishing schedule. He was still barely in his 50s, but his body was falling apart after a lifetime of indulgence.
As his health began to fail, because he was a very heavy drinker and smoker all his life, he had a heart attack in 1961, he found the strain of creating yet another Bond really tough. And that's why he began to feel out of love with his character. And to some, that is why the later books don't have quite the dash and verve of the earlier books.
Fleming's ill health continued to plague him, and he was forced to cut his working schedule to an hour-and-a-half a day as he wrote his final Bond novel. By the time he completed The Man with the Golden Gun on March 14th, 1964, Fleming's long-standing relationship with 007 had come to an end.
It's a bit far-fetched, perhaps, but you know, I think this monster that he created, or this Frankenstein-like figure that he dreamed up, finally turned on its creator.
By the summer of 1964, Fleming's heart had become weaker than ever, and he had very little to do with James Bond. The third movie, Goldfinger, had been completed, but he would never make it to the premiere. Ian Fleming died on August the 12th, 1964, aged just 56.
The end of it was that he did finally get one thing he really wanted, which was to be made the captain of Sandwich Golf Club. And he was actually, or virtually while he was playing golf, that he had the heart attack which killed him 3 hours later. And so I always feel that, you know, with that was when Bond killed his only real victim.
Today, over half a century after James Bond was first created, the iconic secret agent is more popular than ever. The extraordinary truth of Ian Fleming's own experiences has given the world a hero whose fantasy life is far closer to reality than anyone could ever have imagined. And the breathtaking blend of guns, gadgets, and gorgeous girls remains remarkably close to Fleming's original vision.
I think they stand the test of time really well. Bond, in some ways, was the first of a thriller genre that really hasn't changed all that much since. Fleming set the rules, and I think we still, in some ways, abide by them.